And so welcome. This is session one of a 4-session course. As you know, we're going to be having 3 question and answer sessions between the first 3 sessions as well. And so that's going to be tremendously helpful. And it's all about ChatGPT mastery for construction leaders. Session 1 is going to be foundations, getting your team ready to win with AI. Session 2, projects and custom GPTs. Session 3, the reverse AI interview. It's a tremendous tool that you guys can use. You're going to really like that one. And then session 4, building organizational intelligence and strategic advantage. Session 1 is foundations, getting your team ready to win with AI. And what you're going to learn today is the lay of the land, which involves the features of ChatGPT, how to write a strong base prompt, how to improve your prompts, and how to test your prompts. We want to begin with buttonology. Dylan, I'm going to make you the host, and you can share your screen, and we'll dive right in. Dylan will introduce us to that.
All right. So first off, I probably should do show of hands. Show of hands, who here has access to ideally GPT Teams?
Okay, Luke, good. Juliana, yeah. Charlie, did you guys get the Teams version?
I mean, we have the business version. I'm not sure if that's what you're calling
Yeah.
team version.
Yeah.
They used to call it Teams, they changed it to the name to business. So yeah, if you have GPT Business, you're good.
Good.
Yep.
That's key. Okay, everyone's got that. That's awesome. Go ahead, Dylan.
Beautiful. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through there's a lot of features inside of ChatGPT. So my goal is to focus on mainly what features are the most important, kind of the 80-20 to get started. And then you'll incrementally get introduced to other features as we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up ChatGPT and get rid of some of these pop-ups maybe. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
I'm going to make you bigger over here so I can see. Cool. So the chat box. There's a few things I'll call it here. First is the model choice. So in the upper left-hand corner, you have the drop down here, and you have different models you can choose from. Now, most of the time, I'd recommend using auto. Reason being is what's going to happen is in the background, they're going to choose how intelligent the model needs to be based off of the question you've asked. There's a different amount of reasoning that's needed for each ask. Sometimes you'll want to turn on thinking, which is going to boost that reasoning, and you'll get more intelligence from the model. But it's important to note that you don't always want the most intelligent model for an ask because it can sometimes overthink, and it'll overthink in the wrong direction and give you a bad answer. Now, there's also legacy models. So you can see there's a long list of these. You can basically just ignore this. And this is only turned on if you turn it on yourself via settings. So I'd really focus on auto and thinking. Once you select thinking, if I select thinking model, it's going to pop up in this blue section here. It's going to give me a drop down for different levels of reasoning that I could use. So if I select that, you can see it's light, standard, extended, and heavy. 90% of the time, you can just use extended. I wouldn't worry about really any of the others. That's going to do the job. Now, in addition to this, before I get into any other features, I do want to talk about privacy really quick. So if I go to my name down here where it says Dylan, under the profile, I select this. I then go to settings. I'm going to see a settings menu. And in here, I'm going to go down to data controls. And you're going to see a question here that says, do you want to improve the model for everybody? We don't want to improve the model for everybody. We want to turn that off. The reason being is what's happening here is if we had it on, they're going to use our data to train future models. So we want to make sure that this option here is turned off. Has everybody got that?
And Dylan, can you remind us as to the level of security that ChatGPT offers with the pro version, with the business version?
Yeah, so it's standard security like you would get with any other cloud provider. So if you're using Google or if you're using Microsoft or any of these other providers, it's very high-end security. They have all of the compliance regulations, the stamps of SOC 2 and all those things that people like to talk about when it comes to security. They have all those stamps and regulations covered.
So in other words, the bottom line would be that you can share confidential information into ChatGPT and be confident of the security of that information. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so we got the model choice done. The next thing I want to show you is going to be this left-hand sidebar. So the left-hand sidebar, there's a lot of stuff here. There's probably more on mine than on yours, which is fine. So this top portion here, these are different, I would say, features and or tools you can use. So here we have the new chat. So this is when you just start a new conversation. This is searching your chats. This feature is kind of bad. It's not great, but you can kind of search previous chats if you'd like. This, you can ignore this. Next, we have images. So images basically allowing you to create images with the model itself. This comes in handy when you're creating content, when you're creating marketing campaign stuff and different types of ads, etc. There's different models I'd recommend for content creation, which we'll talk about later on if anybody has questions on that. But that's what that's feature is used for. Below that, we have apps. So these are also called connectors. So this is connecting ChatGPT to other data sources. So for instance, if I wanted to connect ChatGPT to my Google Drive or my OneDrive, it can pull that data in and then ChatGPT can read it and then do something with it. And then finally, we have Codex, which this is all about code. We don't necessarily have to worry about this, but this is their specific model for coding. All right. And then below this, we have GPTs and projects. So these two drop downs here are the areas where I recommend most clients spend a good proportion of their time when they're trying to get leverage from these tools. Because if you have any repeatable tasks, which most companies do, you want to try to embed as many of those into these ideally projects to automate some or all of that task. Now, what's the difference between a GP and a project? The primary difference now, and this has changed over the last 6 months. The primary difference between the two is a GPT is something that you can create and share publicly. So it's like creating a tool for the rest of the world to use. For projects, this is where you'll spend most of your time because you can share these within your team. And then an example of a project could be maybe a meeting summarizer, where you have a recurring meeting with your team and you tend to write follow-up emails based off of those meetings. If you create a high-quality project, all you would have to do is drop in the transcript from the meeting, and then it produces back to you an email that's drafted in the tone, the structure, the emphasis, all the things that you care about when it comes to drafting those types of emails. It'll understand all of that if you build it in the right way.
So an example of using this in a practical way would be for a specific project that you're building. Let's say you put into that project the transcript of the meeting minutes from a weekly meeting that you have with the owner and the subs and your clients and all that kind of stuff, and consistently getting good meeting notes and summaries from that. That would be one example of being able to use projects in a practical way.
Exactly.
Just to stop you for a moment, Dylan, Mike and Mand are noting that they do not have images on their version of ChatGPT.
What subscription do you currently have? You probably know by the bottom left-hand corner, it should say something below your name.
Yeah, it says we have ChatGPT Business.
Okay. I wonder if you do this plus sign in your chat window here, do you see create image below that?
Yes.
Okay, so I think part of the reason you might not see it is have you created an image yet before?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not showing up here for you. But either way, this is the same premise. So as long as you select create image, it allows you to then create those images.
So what we do see, and thank you for pointing that out, Dylan. What we do see is a library option, and that
Right.
library has all the images that I have created or ChatGPT has generated for me over the course of time.
So this might just be a UI feature that I've gotten currently. So I have a pro subscription, so that I usually get newer features sooner than other levels. So once you'll probably get access to this once they roll it out to the rest of the users.
Got it. Like a closed beta for the pro, and then one's general availability for the rest.
Right. All right. So like, for instance, Pulse is like a pro specific thing. That's why you wouldn't see that. And that will be eventually rolled out to the remaining users once they get enough computers built out.
10.4. Yeah. So my library is my image repository here.
Right. It's basically the equivalent. Good question. I'll pause for a second as well and see if there are any other questions, because I'm sure that I've already talked through quite a bit. So,
and you can use the chat box, or you can just start talking. There's not a ton of us here, so it won't be disruptive.
When you say that projects are shareable within your teams, is there a certain way that you make them shareable, or are you going to go over that, or is it just...
So if say I created a new project by selecting new project here, and we'll just say test, I'll hit enter and it'll create the project. Once I've created this and set it up, there's a share button up here in the upper right-hand corner. So when I do share, since I don't have a business account, you're not going to see this option on mine. But when you create yours, when you select share, there'll be an option here that says share with team or share with organization. And then when you share it, you can share either view access or you can share administrative access, which allows them to change the project as well. So that's exactly how you would kind of share it within your organization.
Excellent question.
My question kind of has to do with the projects and your meeting minute summarization example. So we have Teams that also does this meeting minute summarization. So is there any feature in the project that would it differentiates ChatGPT from the Teams version? Do the projects save all of our meeting minutes in one place? Is there maybe a more benefit to using the ChatGPT version?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you ask us in a slightly different way?
Yeah, our Microsoft Teams, which is similar to Zoom, even Zoom has the AI meeting summarization.
Okay, I think I get it. I think I get the question.
Yeah.
So the question is basically Teams, Zoom, Hangouts, et cetera. They all write their own meeting minutes and meeting summaries for things that you've done. Is that right?
Yes.
right? So the primary difference usually is, and this is actually why I have those as well. So I have all those tools and they all do the same thing. I usually still use projects, and reason being is that I have very specific meetings that I have with clients on a recurring basis. And there's a very specific structure that I want that email to be drafted as such. So I want to make sure that we have like an executive summary, there's like a deadline section, there's a lessons learned section, a homework section, an insight section, a resource section. And I also want it to be written at a 5th grade reading level using simple sentences and words. And I want to make sure like I have all these preferences of how I like to have my things drafted. And usually those tools, they have a generic template and a generic way of writing things. And that's usually why I try to avoid those tools, because they're not as customizable as me using the highest end models in the way that would suit my need. So it's really just comes down to quality and customizability.
And then do those customizable settings. Can you keep those customizable settings? Okay.
Yeah, so session 2 is going to be all about creating projects and GPTs, and I'll walk you through in extreme depth how to do all this stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
Another great question. Thank you.
Very cool. All right, I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to go back to here. All right, so we've talked through the left-hand side mainly, and then down at the bottom under projects, you're going to see your chats. So there's actually a new feature called group chats. This is something that was just released, I don't know, like 2-3 weeks ago. So I'm still figuring out why this is useful compared to the other things. But the main thing I've taken away from this is it's a really good, both collaborative tool as well as a learning tool. So for instance, I have a chat here that I have with an AI about some convoluted coding agent stuff. And if I wanted to add people to this, I could do add people. And I could say start group chat, and then I could add individuals to this conversation. So if I actually copy this link, maybe share it with you guys, you can, I don't know if you're probably not interested in the topic, but just to show you how it works. Let me see if I can, here is the chat here. All right. So I just sent that link. You could probably click into it. And it's going to allow you to actually have this conversation with me. So if anybody here uses WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram or even Messenger on Facebook, you can have group threads and group chats where people are talking back and forth. That's the same premise here, but you're having a conversation with an AI as a group. And the reason that's useful for learning is that you can kind of see if you have somebody that's good at kind of having these conversations, you can learn from how they're interacting with the AI while they're kind of doing it. And then the other one's collaborative, where you have somebody kind of contribute to the conversation.
So Mandar chatted in that the action isn't available in the current workspace. Switch to another workspace to continue.
Right. So I'm assuming that's maybe because you're using a business account, and this is something that maybe you have to be in the same group to have access. But Megan joined, so I'm not sure how Megan got in. But my assumption, this probably works for you inside of your teams. So if you wanted to use this for your groups, you should be able to share conversations back and forth.
Just for the sake of understanding, I'm not signed into our business account currently. I'm on like a free trial page, so that's probably.
That's why. There you go. All right. Back here. So I want to walk you through a few other things. So we have this plus sign, and then we have the microphone and the advanced voice mode. So the difference between these two here is I honestly recommend most interactions you have with AI, you use this microphone or you use some form of dictation. Reason being is that there's 2 reasons: speed and effectiveness. When you speak to an AI from speech to text, you're getting more out of your head faster, so you don't have to wait as long when you're typing. And then the second thing is context is key. That's something that I'll repeat a million times throughout this entire cohort, is that the context you provide to the AI is the most important thing. And the way to get a lot of context from your head into the AI's head is usually verbally, because we humans, we like to talk, and typing is sometimes a hindrance to our ability to communicate something. So to use this feature, all you have to do is select the microphone. And as I'm talking right now, you can see the wavelengths moving back and forth. When I select this check mark, it's going to convert everything I've just said into text, and then I would just hit enter. That's that feature. The other feature here is advanced voice mode. So that's going to be when the AI talks back to you. So instead of voice to text, it's voice to voice. So I'm having a conversation back and forth. That has its uses. So I usually use this for ideation and usually thinking through a problem, but I'll usually do it on my phone. So I have the app on my phone. I'll put in my headphones, I'll turn on the advanced voice mode, and I'll go on a walk around the neighborhood. And I'll talk through either a problem, a thing I'm researching, or whatever else. And it's basically talking to an expert on a specific idea back and forth as I'm kind of like pacing. So those are those 2 features.
If you've never used that feature, you should try it out. It's kind of trippy.
Yeah, I think it's, and then the last thing here I'll do is the plus sign. So when I click this, there's a lot of things that pop up. So the first things I'll share is you can upload, obviously, photos and files. We'll talk more about the types of files and photos you want to upload, depending on the type of task you're working on. Like I mentioned previously, we have the apps here, and that's what you're seeing here for Google Drive. I've already turned this on, so it's already connected to my drive. I can then kind of call on things in my folders. We already talked about creating images. Then we have deep research. So a new thing that's interesting is that in the last, I'd say 3 to 4 weeks, a lot of like my usage and the people that I kind of are in the circles that I spend a lot of time in when it comes to like cutting edge AI, they've stopped using deep research as much. Reason being is that if I turn on extended thinking with GPT 5.2 and I set this to extended, and then if I go back to the plus sign and instead of using deep research, I'm going to use just basic web search. So this is going to do the web search for me. I've found A/B testing time and time again that the responses I'm getting back from this model is actually better than deep research. It's faster and it's not as long to read. Usually deep research provides back 20 to 30 pages of content. The reason that is that the model that's behind this deep research is actually an older model. So this is actually 4.0 that's running this. And here we're using the most up-to-date model. So if you're going to do research, which you'll probably do a lot of, I'd recommend starting with 5.2 with thinking on and basic web search turned on instead of deep research. Because again, it's faster. You don't have to read as much.
And please keep in mind that we are recording this, so this will be sent out in a summary, and that will be tremendously helpful to you. Luke, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so on the apps part, I see you've got add from Google Drive. I guess I just want to understand that more. So I've got a ton in my Google Drive that is shared with other members in the company, but I also have a ton on there that I don't want shared. If I add that my Google Drive to the company, like what information is in there for one? For two, like, can it be accessed? Can the stuff in my Google Drive be accessed from everybody else that is a team member in our company, ChatGPT?
Yeah, so I'll kind of read it back to you just to make sure I understand it. So maybe on your Google Drive, you might have, I don't know, like everybody's salary in one folder, and you don't want anybody in the company to see that folder. Is that right? Something like that?
For sure.
Right. So when you do, whoopsies. So when you do this, you can select different projects and folders you want it to look at, and nobody's going to have access to connector. Like you're the only one that's going to have access to your connector because you're granting it permissions through your username and your profile into Google Drive. So if other people connect their drives, they're only going to give access to the stuff they have access to already through Google Drive, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
And then Charlie had a question about, doesn't it search the web by default?
So no, it only, so there's 3 types of questions you would ask an AI that would determine if it's going to search or not. So if you ask a question like, what's the capital of France? That knowledge is already baked into the knowledge of the brain of the AI, so it doesn't have to go off and find that information. It was already trained on it. That's like the first type of question. The second type of question is something that it'll definitely research. So it's like, what's the stock price of NVIDIA as of right now? It'll definitely go get that because it's not inside of its brain. And then the third is the one that's kind of on the fence. So it's something in between those two where, I don't know, it could be like, what was the most recent iPhone released by Apple in 2025 or something like that. It could be in its knowledge, it couldn't be, and the AI will make that determination. But if you want it to search, you want it to automatically search the web, either you turn this on, you just turn that blue link on, it's going to automatically search no matter what you ask it, or you can tell it in the prompt implicitly saying, hey, I want you, and this is something I do often, and I'll kind of teach you this as well, is if I want it to research best practices for something, I'll say research best practices as of today's date. So I'll say January 7th, 2026. And when I say that, it implicitly triggers the AI to go off and research because it knows that it was only trained up to a certain point. Does that kind of answer the question, Charlie? Groovy. So we've walked through most of the things in here. A few other things I'll quickly highlight that you probably won't use, but I guess it's nice to know if you want to go shopping. So Black Friday, this is great because I used it quite a lot. There's a shopping research feature where it kind of goes off and it researches products for you, but it asks you questions while it's researching to make sure it like fine tunes this product that you want. Agent mode is allowing
there, well, more than just Black Friday, you can think of something that you want to purchase for your business, a piece of equipment or something like that. And by all means, try the tool out and see how effective it is. Agreed.
And then agent mode is allowing the AI to maneuver in a browser. So it's basically having the AI click through a screen for me. This is still, I would say it's in its infancy. It's not that robust of a feature yet. But with that being stated, I'm guessing that in 2026, this is probably going to be one of the most rapidly increasing in usefulness features of all the models, GPT, Claude, and Gemini. And that's allowing the AI to actually maneuver throughout a browser and do things on your behalf without it taking forever and it failing. So it's not super relevant now, but it will be relevant soon. And then study and learn. It's kind of self-explanatory. It kind of puts itself into a Socratic form of interacting with you. So it's going to ask you a lot of questions instead of simply giving you answers. And then Canvas is the last one I'll talk through, which is this is something that you would use when you're having it write you either a report or a memo or like a longer email or something like that, where you can actually work with the AI collaboratively. It's kind of like Google Docs, where it's like you open up a Google Doc and you and somebody else are working on that Google Doc together. It's similar with Canvas, where you have the AI working with you on a document where it can make specifically targeted edits on certain things. All right, I'll pause there. I know it's a lot, but like you said, this is recorded and you have access to us. So you can always ask questions. Any questions?
Is Canvas just a you and the AI? Like you couldn't have you, a coworker, and the AI?
Yeah, it's usually just you and the AI. So I'll just show you quickly. I want you to write me a poem about the universe, black holes, and the Hubble Space Telescope. So you can see right now it's writing a poem, but it's in this black box. And this black box is representative of the canvas. So once it's finished writing, I'll quickly show you how to edit with it and the kind of the benefit of it. It's a long poem. There we go. All right, so if I do edit, it's going to pull this screen over. So let me pull this over. So you can see there's two screens here, right? On the left side is the chat. On the right side is the canvas. And so the cool thing about the canvas is a few things. So I can actively edit this right now while I'm inside of it. So I can add text into this and it'll save it. So that's kind of the Google Docs element. But also what's really cool is I can highlight certain parts of this and I can ask ChatGPT to change it. So I can go here and say, I want this to be shorter. And when it changes this, it's not going to rewrite the entire thing. It's only going to change what I highlighted. And that's really beneficial for a lot of reasons. One, you know exactly what it changed. But the second thing is that it doesn't have to rewrite the entire piece. And if it rewrites the entire piece, over time, as the AI's memory fills, its intelligence degrades. So we want to avoid doing that. And that's kind of one of the benefits of doing this.
So that's an example of something that's kind of subtle in a certain way, but very important when you're understanding how to interact with the AI, is that idea of degrading intelligence because of the way that you're using it. And if you're using it correctly, you keep the level of intelligence at a good level, so to speak.
Yeah. And there's also features here, so you can actually share. So you would share this conversation. When you shared the conversation with a colleague, they would get access to their own instance of this. So they would then see this this right up here. You can do this little button down here for suggested edits. And that's going to give you some kind of pre-baked things that the AI can do, such as adjusting the length. So I can adjust the entire length of the overall post. I can say, I want this to be shorter, longer, etc., and it'll change it. It can change the reading level. So back to the point that I made previously, writing something at a 5th grade reading level or an 8th grade reading level or something else like that. It can do a final polish, which is basically rewriting the overall thing for whatever targeted change you want it to do. And then you can add emojis, which everybody loves. All right, that's Canvas. Yeah.
A quick question. If you share this Canvas with someone, do you see the entire history of the changes, or is it just the latest version that gets shared?
So if you share what I just clicked over here, the share button, they'll see the entire conversation, okay, including the canvas. If you wanted to just share part of a conversation, you can share, like if I scroll to the bottom of this chat here, you can see there's some options here. If I do the 3 dots, that's actually not helpful. Maybe here. That's not helpful either. Well, usually there's a share button. If you click this, it says share. And if you did that, it would just share what's above it. So it's going to share that segment of the conversation, not the entire thing.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before I move on to prompting?
And this is where we're going to dive into the what, why, how framework, correct?
Yep.
Excellent. This is key right here, guys.
All right. So here we go. Some pretty slides for you. So the WWH framework is something that I use with all my clients. And it's the simplest way that I can guide somebody into writing a good first base prompt. Because when it comes to prompt engineering, there's an endless amount of things that you could do to squeeze out more quality from the AI, but there's no need for you to get overwhelmed by all that stuff. So usually what I recommend is starting with this. So when you draft your prompt, you want to answer 3 simple questions. What do you want the AI to do? Second question is, why do you want the AI to do that thing? And the third question is, how should it go about doing it? Any constraints that you care about, the how. So the what, self-explanatory, what is it doing? The why is something that a lot of people often miss, but is really important not to miss. And the reason this is important is that the AI can make additional knock-on implications or inference from what you've stated and give you a higher quality response, because there's a lot of subtlety and things that maybe you don't necessarily know how to communicate that can be inferred from the AI if you give it the why of why you're doing this in the first place.
And this would be an excellent example of why using the dictation tool is very helpful, because what you can do is you can kind of brain dump into there. And as you're talking, new ideas pop in, and that can be a really good way to help you improve the prompt and get clarity as you go through the process.
And then the how is going to be on constraints. So this is stating anything around how you want the AI to produce the thing. So it could be steps of instructions. So it's like, I want you to first research, then I want you to then summarize, and then I want you to then ask me a question. That's procedural. It could be something around the output. It could be, I want this to be only one page. I want it to be using short sentences, and I want it to have a title that's following the structure. That's kind of covers the how. Now, an example of this. This here is not a great prompt. This is a bad prompt. And this is all around RFIs. So a bad prompt looks very short and concise like this, where it's saying, I want you to act as a construction project engineer and write an RFI based on the information provided. Make it clear and concise, formatted like a normal RFI, and use the input details to generate the request. This isn't horrible. This isn't like a horrible prompt, but it could be improved drastically. The way we can improve this is by doing the what, why, and how. So that's kind of an improved version right here. So at the very beginning, we have a clear what. So the what is act as a construction project engineer to generate an RFI from the user's input. We're clear on what it needs to do. The why below that is specifying the goal is for you to clearly communicate any questions and clarifications needed to resolve this specific construction related uncertainties so the work can proceed without any delays or rework. We're giving it the why. And then below here is the how. So here I'm telling it explicitly, you can only use the input provided from the user. And that actually what we're doing there, it's a concept called grounding. So we're grounding the AI in the user's input. So it doesn't go off and hallucinate based off of what it found on the internet or anywhere else. After that, I'm telling it kind of how I want it to write the RFI, kind of the formatting for the output, etc. And then down here, I'm even more specific on the how as well, saying I want the RFI itself to follow this exact structure. So that's an improved prompt that you would draft. But now comes the magic. So there's actually these tools called prompt improvers. So OpenAI and Claude both provide these prompt improvers, where once you give it a base prompt, it's going to automatically inject all the best practices of prompt engineering, their specific models, into your prompt to make it basically a prompt on steroids. So you can get higher quality outputs from the AI. And I'll actually show you how this works, as well as share the link. Let me grab this. And it's important to note that you'll have to re-log in. How do I get to the chat? Where'd it go? There it is. You'll have to log back in, but this is owned by OpenAI. It's just a separate portal from ChatGPT. And then once you're in, you may or may not need to add credits. I don't remember if the previous cohort had to, but if you do, it's like, I think it's like $3 to $5, and then that'll last you like 6 months or something crazy because of the minimal amount of tokens that are being used. And the way that you would use this is, let me actually grab the prompt here. So this is the prompt I just walked you through with the what, why, and how. And I'm just going to paste this in as is. And then I'm going to select optimize. But before I do that, in the upper left-hand corner, you can see this dropdown. It says optimize for GPT 5.2. You can choose the model you're optimizing for. Most of the time, you're going to use 5.2.
Let me ask you a question, Dylan.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, you deleted the A. I know you did that unintentionally on the act. Is that going to have an impact on the response?
No, but I'll add it back. No, it's totally intentional. It's all part of the math.
That's right, baby.
All right, so I'll do optimize, and it'll take probably 10 to 20 seconds. And then it's going to basically rewrite the overall prompt, highlight certain segments in blue of what it added, and then also give me comments and teach me why it changed what it changed. So I can both learn about prompt engineering as it gives me better prompts back.
And again, we're giving you a relatively generic example here. To get the most out of this process, you, of course, will have to use something that's more specific to you, the way that you guys do RFIs, the way that you handle this specific example.
Right. So here, it gave me back the improved prompt. So it has this blue section where it doesn't seemingly, I think it just rewrote this instead of did RFI, or it changed it from generate to draft. Okay. And then it basically adds some elements here. So it added instructions as well. So this is a new addition where it's telling it to take these steps and kind of be more process oriented on what you're doing first. And the amount of changes that occur will be dictated on the prompt you provide. Because sometimes I'll give it a prompt and it'll go from, 10 lines to 60 lines. It really just depends on the complexity of the task. Since drafting an RFI is a simple task, the prompt doesn't necessarily have to be massive. But if it's a task that has many different steps involved, the prompt actually can get kind of beefy. And
right above the chat box there, Dylan, is the review changes +12 -11. What happens when you click on that, if anything?
It'll show you what changed in more detail.
There you go.
So it's kind of like a zoom in to these comments. And this basically shows that it added 12 lines and removed 11. And
then Luke has a question here, a good one here. Under projects, other than having different jobs as projects, can we have a project such as RFIs or submittals or even contract review? The answer, Luke, is yes. Yep. So a project isn't just a construction project by any means. It's any kind of specific thing that you want to do on a repetitive basis.
Yeah, I could, let me get, this thing keeps getting in my way. Yeah, I could show you. I don't know if you'll, like, some of these are obvious things that I do, but like I have advisors. So this is my tax peep. So it's basically a tax advisor that has an understanding of all of my business context of where it was registered, the finances, everything, and it even does research on current tax policy. So since tax season's happening, I need some tax help. So basically I ask it questions and it gives me insights, and then I run it by my tax advisor. And then honestly, like 99% of the times, he's surprised. He's like, wow, this is actually really informative. And some of the things I've shared with him, he actually then shared with other clients he works with. He's like, this is actually a cool thing that I can do with other people, not just you. So you'll be surprised in the quality of the responses you get based on the prompt you put in there.
Dylan, real quick. So I am testing out the prompt improver. What did you mention about the blue highlighted improved prompts? What does that do exactly?
You see on here,
the blues. Yeah. What are those blues for?
Oh, so those are the adjustments. So it's basically showing that, like,
adjustments. Okay.
yeah, it's
Gotcha.
like saying, hey, I've added this line. I've added this line here as well. It's kind of just showing you what's changed.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Can GPT optimize its own prompts, or do you have to go to this optimizer?
Yeah, so there's two different ways that I usually have people optimize prompts. The reason I'd recommend using this one is that it's by the provider itself. OpenAI and Claude provide these out of the box that you can use. Gemini, Midjourney, like all these other model providers that aren't these two, if they don't offer these providers, what I'll do is I'll say, hey, here's a prompt. I need you, and if I'm talking to an AI, so I'll be in, I don't know, ChatGPT and saying, hey, I need you to research, let's do something like this. I want you to research the best practices for prompting Nano Banana Pro as of January 7th, 2026. And then I want you to then rewrite the prompt I provided you to make sure that I can get the best out of that model. So that's something that I would usually do if I didn't have a prompt optimizer. Does that kind of make sense, Charlie?
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess, is the optimizer just better at it?
It's better at that specific model. So it's since we're prompting GPT 5.2, it's very good at doing that because the researchers that built this are also the ones that built the model itself. So they know exactly how to prompt their own models. But when it comes to prompting like Nano Banana Pro that I mentioned here, they don't necessarily know how to do that. So it's best off to outsource that to AI, to have AI go off and research it and figure out what the best practices are, and then come back and write that for me. Any other questions?
Does the optimizer that you're using there, does that require a subscription or anything?
This right here is just ChatGPT. So we would just ask.
The OpenAI one there?
Oh, the OpenAI, the one that I shared earlier?
Yep.
Yep. So you should be able to log in and get access to this, the link I shared in the chat. Once you've logged in and tried to get access, if you do have to add, I think somebody already got access. So Mandar, when you use this, did you have to add credits or did you just log in and it was there?
I just logged in. Mine's a business account, so I guess it just gave me access.
Yeah, so I guess it supposes on the subscription you have. If you do have a business account, you probably don't have to pay additional credits.
I have to say, Dylan, I don't want to bog down this meeting. Maybe this is for next week. But I did use the prompt improver. It really improved it to the point where now it's giving me, I asked it to research an article, and it's actually giving me code, a JSON code. I don't know how we got there.
So this is something I've talked about with previous cohorts. Like the quick TLDR on this is that you're using a tool right now. So this prompt improver is actually dedicated for developers. But for them, JSON, they're like, oh yeah, I love that stuff. The reason it's giving you JSON, you can just change it. So you could tell it to give me Markdown, and it'll give you back something that's more text readable and not necessarily codey. But the reason it defaults to JSON is it's assuming that you're going to take this output and you're going to plug it into some code. So it's automatically fed into some other application.
Yeah, because it gave me like the matrix here. And
yeah.
I felt cool for a second. And then I was like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, no, you could just go back to it in the chat box here and say, change it. You could like this, you'd be like, change it from JSON to Markdown. And
from JSON to Markdown. Gotcha.
Yeah, and it'll change it for you.
That's a great question, Mando. I really appreciate that one. That's excellent input.
All right. Well, those are most of the things I wanted to talk you through for at least right now. Now it's time for you to go off and do some stuff on your own.
All right. Welcome back. Okay. Let's just go around the rooms here. I want to start it off with Luke and your group. Just give us some feedback on how you did. Any questions, any insights that you have? Now is the time to dive into that, please.
So we decided to have so we're subcontractors, so we're constantly writing proposals and then receiving contracts. And so we decided to have the AI compare our proposal to the contract that we got from our customer, and have it make a list of changes. We were not successful at first, and then Dylan helped us kind of refine it and use dictation to help really give it a lot more detail and context, and gave us a pretty good answer.
That's beautiful.
Now it's still spitting out the answer.
Still working on it.
Right.
What questions do you have for us based on what you've done?
Do you have questions?
Not particularly. No. I think Dylan just helped us out tremendously with the optimized or whatever you want to call it, that
The prompt
optimizer.
One thing he was just saying was that, because I was explaining to him why we were trying to do this, and he's like, okay, don't tell it to me, tell it to the AI, right? Put everything in that you can, tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you want it done, exactly what.
But that's really important. Again, that just what you just said there, don't tell me, tell the AI. So again, whatever it is that you're trying to do, start telling the AI that, because it has the capacity to receive the information. The dictation tool works really well. That's a key insight right there. That's wonderful. I appreciate that. Mike, let me bounce to you. Tell us what you guys did, and then any questions that you have at the moment for Dylan.
Yeah, I think we and I'll Mandar chime in and Juliana chime in a little bit, but we struggled a little bit. I think we went into the exercise believing it was to really craft a specific RFI, and not necessarily craft the framework for a prompt to be reused by our project engineers. I mean, is that fair, Mandar?
Yes. I mean, yes.
And what did you guys learn through the process? What was most useful? What if any roadblocks do you still have in your minds in terms of where we're at so far in the course?
I think we need to meet. Go ahead, Mandar. Go ahead.
No, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we need to spend a little bit more time working on creating the prompt framework, if you will, and providing the context of the WWH in that framework so that we could then perhaps create create prompt to provide to project engineers. And the difficult thing is not all of our RFIs are created equal. Some are crafted in such a way where we don't want to provide a suggested response, or we don't want to expose ourselves to any design liability or something like that, which is something as an executive I'm always very concerned with.
Yeah. Okay. So another key insight there, you have to give the AI the appropriate guardrails and then think through the appropriate application. So in your case, Mike, from what I'm hearing, there would be some RFIs that you might want to use a particular prompt for, and other RFIs where you use a different prompt and use your judgment in that way.
Yeah.
So my recommendation also is, because we have these Q&A sessions between each session, what I would recommend that you guys do is take the information, start using it and applying it, and then come to the Q&A sessions with any of the roadblocks that you're facing or any of the insights that you've gained. And then you can tap into our wisdom and knowledge during the Q&A in a more sort of open-ended discussion format as well. So that can be tremendously useful to you.
And two other quick things I'll share on this is to that point around making sure that the AI doesn't do something it shouldn't. If you do a lot of reading on like prompt engineering, a lot of people will say to use negating terms. So never do this, not, like no, etc. That used to work, but no longer is relevant these days because AI is very good at following instructions. So instead of using negating terms like never, not, etc., you should say only. So only do this and focus on that, or whatever else. Say what it should do instead of what it shouldn't do. And it's going to follow that very effectively. So in the context of the RFI that you're talking about, you wouldn't have to say never use this section. You would just say only use these sections and nothing else. By doing that, it'll consistently only provide those sections and nothing else. The other thing around drafting the prompts and maybe making it easier on the WWH framework is, this kind of goes to Luke's point, is think about the prompts you give to the AI as if you're preparing a new employee. Say you've just hired somebody on and they're going to be the RFI person going forward. And you sit down with this person and you're like, okay, your job is to write RFIs. I'm going to give you topic A, and you're going to give me an RFI back. That RFI should follow this structure, and you're doing it for this reason. And think about it as if you're onboarding a new employee, and you can even use dictation to communicate the prompt out and then get it improved. And I think you'll be surprised by just like looking through that lens when talking with AI as if it's a new employee. It'll dramatically make the prompting process much easier.
That's very excellent. Very excellent. Let me go to Megan, Charlie. Give us some feedback. What did you guys learn? What did you notice? What would you do differently based on what you guys dived into?
So I guess I'm not sure that we would do anything differently, but just kind of wrapping our heads around how to approach setting up the prompts. We ended up doing an RFI prompt. We put it into the open AI prompt optimizer. We set up the what, why, and how, popped it in there, did some optimization, and then we brought it back in and set up a project in our Team Jet ChatGPT and we ran like a test case in there. And I guess in doing so, I'm going to ask my question to Dylan now. So I noticed that the language that came out of the RFI looks strikingly similar to some of the product from my other chats. Dylan, is it smart enough to go into my other chats and know when I'm talking about the same project, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so there's a memory feature inside of ChatGPT where it'll save not everything, but some things that are somewhat generic. So it may know like the type of business that you're in, and it may know like if you've shared like where you live, your favorite colors, or types of food you prefer, like if you have a pet, general things like that, it'll remember. So maybe you probably were talking about it in a different chat about a specific project. It may have remembered that you were working on that project. So when you called on it in a separate chat, it pulled that memory and kind of combined it with that write-up. So it doesn't remember everything, just kind of like generalizable things.
Gotcha.
So that would lead us to make the action item from that is don't assume that it remembers, give it the correct context when you're creating a project so that you're assured that it is focused on the right things.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
As it relates to that. So can I build into the prompt for it to pull from all the previous knowledge that I've given it? And I guess what would that look like? Or would I have
you could ask it to refer, because I've done that sometimes where I'll say like, for instance, only give me YouTube titles of titles that I've not used before, and know that it likely it hasn't remembered every title that I've selected because I haven't been explicit about the choices, but I know that it is aware of some of them. So you can do it, but the accuracy in which it remembers is kind of iffy. So if you really wanted it to remember everything about a specific project or a specific task, that's where you would use the knowledge files inside of that project for. So for that specific project that's drafting that RFI for you, I'd upload all the files in there. And what it'll do is it'll look at those files first before it does anything for you. So it has that context in its brain before it gives you a response. So it's more tailored.
Okay, that's helpful.
That's beautiful. Excellent. Excellent. Dylan, you were going to talk about the idea of testing prompts.
Yes, testing and dictation. So I just dropped in the chat, I think to everybody, 2 links. You don't have to use these. It's just a recommendation if you want to try it out. These are 2 dictation tools that allow you to dictate outside of just ChatGPT. So in ChatGPT, you have the microphone, you select, and you can do dictation. So I think maybe some of you may have experienced this in our little breakouts. I actually did dictation into Zoom. So I basically spoke out into Zoom, gave you dictation, you copy and pasted it into something and then used it. I use dictation quite a lot now. So if I use Mac, so I use Super Whisper, but you could also do Windows with Whisper Flow. And those are tools that basically are very good at dictation.
And we've chatted into the box, both Mac and the Windows, Whisper Flow and the Super Whisper. And just again, Dylan, just go back again and repeat why this is important, how this can be used, the application here, please.
Yep. Efficiency and effectiveness. So it's much faster to talk than type. And the amount of context you can get out of your head into the AI's head is much better if you do it through dictation for most people. So it's a recommendation to get used to this behavior, because this is going to be a behavior that the masses adopt over time. Like if I had to like put a bet down, if I had to guess, I'm assuming that most people when they interact with their machines in the future will be through voice. They'll have like a little earpiece and like some sort of little like device on them that's not a phone. It'll be some sort of AI thing, and they'll just talk to it all day. And this is just
Does punctuation matter at that point? Or I mean, because I'm a total nerd. Whenever I text, I use I talk into my voice assistant, but I'm always punctuating all of my texts and making So does it really even matter, or should I just get over it?
The latter. So the reason being is that the AI can infer a lot from what you're saying, even if the grammar's off or the spelling's off or things like that. And I actually have another client that's very similar to you. So he runs a research team of around like 60 researchers. And these researchers, they write papers all day. That's all they do. And for him, he's like the chief editor. He's like, everything has to be perfect when it's written. And I've been working with him on this. And this probably the most difficult thing for him to let go is that like when he does dictation, he has to make the edits afterwards, and he kind of negates the benefit or one of the benefits, but he's getting better with it and he's starting to use it more often. So again, it's just one of those things where writing still has a place. Writing is an important practice of thinking, which manifests through typing. So I think it's definitely necessary, but for this specific use case with AI, it's just you're gonna get better responses and it's gonna be faster.
I think one thing to keep in mind here, friends, and this is maybe a little esoteric, but I want to point it out, is that we went from an oral society to a written society, right? We went from telling stories around the campfire to the printing press and having books that we read. And so that enhanced the importance of writing and even good handwriting and things like that. And some of us know, like Mike, you and I, the age that we're at, learning how to write legibly was really important. Whereas, for you folks here who are a bit younger, learning to write legibly is completely unimportant, really, at the end of the day. And we're moving from a written society using these tools back into an oral society in many ways. And I think that's something to really be keeping in mind here, is that we're learning ways of interacting with, or we're relearning ways of interacting with these tools that we will continue to refine as we move forward. So keep in mind here, guys, you're in this course, but we're still at the very beginning in terms of the uses of the technology and how the technology is structured. And so what you're doing here is laying a foundation of interacting with the technology that will stand you in good stead as the technology continues to evolve.
That's a good take, Eric. That's a good one.
You like that one?
Yeah. We're evolving we're evolving to a TikTok society.
I know. I've been thinking about this one. It's kind of interesting, huh?
Yeah,
all right. So let me ask, what are the main frustrations that you guys are finding so far? You can feel it. You can chat it into the box, or you can just shout it out. Any of the main frustrations? What's not working for you guys so far?
Well, I guess nobody's coming in. So I forgot to mention testing. So around frustrations. So when it comes to you're meant to be frustrated, and that's okay. And reason being is that it's an iterative process. So oftentimes the AI is not going to come back with the perfect response in the first shot. And that's where testing comes into play. So once you've created your prompt and you're using AI to give you responses for something, you should assume it's not going to be perfect at first. You'll probably have to iterate 3 to 5 to 6 times where you test it, you get the output, it gives you a bad output, you figure out explicitly why it's bad, and then you take that lesson learned and you embed that in the system prompt and you update it and you run it again and you get another output. And it could be wrong for a different reason. You take that reason why it's wrong, you put that in the system prompt, and you iteratively do this over and over until you finally tune it to the point where the output is consistently high quality. So testing is at the center of all of this. And you got to get really good at knowing what good looks like. That's actually something I've found a lot of people struggle with, is when you ask them, what makes a good RFI, or what makes a good contract, what makes a good proposal, what makes a good presentation. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just like, it's just good. It's usually intuitive. We have to make those intuitions more explicit and then bake them into AI's heads.
And that's, again, why using the voice dictation is helpful, because you can feel free in your voice dictation to be imprecise or imperfect and even repeat yourself and, blurt out ideas and let the AI take the information and use it and then evaluate the information that you get. And the key insight here again, and I think, Charlie, we talked about this a little bit in the breakout room, is that the upfront process can be a little frustrating, but once you've got it dialed in, that's when the AI is most effective in terms of the efficiencies that we're looking for. Okay.
We have a question from Luke.
Cool. Let's have a look.
Trying to understand what all we can use for estimating PM inside business. Okay. So basically trying to figure out what AI can be applied to is the biggest frustration. Is that right, Luke?
Essentially, I've used it a lot so I have one of our estimators here and then one of our PMs. I've used it a lot for basically a lot of HR for our hiring process, for interview sheets. I've used it a lot in that area. I haven't used it much for much more. And other than like comparing bids or takeoffs, like I guess we're just trying to get a better feel of how we can make it more useful with estimating and project management.
What does it look like to incorporate it into our, daily routine of, being more productive? I don't know.
Yeah, so this is something actually we talked about in the previous cohort, which is a term that I use called AI intuition. So it's a muscle or skill that's built over time. And there's like the best analogy I can think of in my head is if you're like looking over on top of a map of like a video game or something, and the character is like walking around and the whole map is dark and they only see like a small subset of the map. But when they start moving through the map, everything starts to get a little brighter and they can see where things are. And the map eventually becomes clear, but at first it's dark. The whole premise of exposure to AI and using it daily, you start to figure out what problems are susceptible to being partially or completely automated with AI and what aren't, based off of where AI is today. And that's the whole name of the game, is finding problems, creating a list and saying this can be or can't be automated with AI today, and then moving down that list. And the thing is, you have to revisit that list every 2 months because new models are getting released every 2 to 3 weeks. And as those new models are released, they can achieve more complex tasks. So what didn't work last week can work this week. So it's really the frustration that you have is it's like natural. It's like the whole cycle that's expected because you're getting used to this tool and you're figuring out what it can be used for. And the only way you'll learn and get that intuition over time is exposure. So you're doing the right thing right now, is using it daily, creating a list of things you want to automate, and incrementally trying to see if AI can do it or not.
And what I just popped onto the screen here, Luke, is some feedback from one of the participants in the course previously. And I just want to highlight this. It says here, before the course, I used ChatGPT like an executive assistant for SOPs and planning. But what he says here, we focused first on admin and data entry. From there, we started using it for meeting analysis and job site safety documentation. And then one example is his JHA, Job Hazard Analysis bot. It reads the scope of work, pulls the OSHA construction standards, identifies hazards, lists mitigations, and they're working on building that out. And once it's built out, it'll save them about 5 hours per job for every JHA submission. So that's just one example of something very, again, now I've got to say, Dimitri is committed to this idea of what Dylan just said, of taking a task and working it through. So if you're looking for a magic pill, as far as rewriting an email so it sounds more professional, magic pill. As far as some of the more complex things that you're asking about, that's where the testing and the iteration comes in.
And I think a very practical thing that you can do today, starting right now, is create an AI wish list. So create a document, notepad, wherever, it's something that you can update easily. And as you go throughout your days and your weeks, you note down, man, I wish that this was either completely or partially automated. And that eventually turns into your AI wish list. And you, over time, test out on that list. So it's like, I have these 5 items. Let's take one off and let's run it through GPT and see if either this whole thing can be automated, or maybe if not the whole thing can be automated, I'm going to take this task and I'm going to chop it up into 3 chunks. One chunk is automated by AI, one chunk is done by a human, and one chunk is done by maybe another AI. So you just kind of got to play with it, create your list, and then work your way through it. So I guess that's good homework for everybody between now and next time, is like create your list and make sure you're updating it on a daily basis.
And another thing to do with, once you've created that list, you take one item of that list and then you start chatting with the bot using the dictation tool, right? And going back and forth. Listen, this is something that I want to do. What can you do to help me with this? And it'll come back with some questions, and we're going to get into some more detail later on in the course that will help you structure that conversation in a very effective way to tap into how AI can help you most efficiently.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dylan, I have a question.
Yep.
Hey, so we create this, again, I'm still trying to get up to speed on what each components are called within the ChatGPT world, but let's say we have created this, we've taught the AI what it is that when someone asks to create an RFI or requests help to create an RFI, these are the components. It's almost like I want to create a fill in the blanks kind of a thing where everything is fed into the model. And when someone says, hey, create an RFI for ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, it actually goes back to what the model has been taught and goes through its checklist and goes, okay, you're missing this, you're missing a detail, you're missing a drawing, you're missing a grid line, you're missing a specific component, you're missing schedule impact, cost impact, da-da-da-da. When we do that, is there a way that if, let's say, a PE or somebody picks up their phone, they have ChatGPT on their phone, and we've shared that project with them, and they can just go into the chat and say, hey, I want to create an RFI. I don't find this. I'm not able to find that. By the way, use the other RFI project template as the basis for generating a response. Can that happen? As in, instead of them manually going to that project that was shared with them, it generically tells ChatGPT about what it needs and asks it to refer to an existing structure or framework that was created as part of another project that's been shared with them. Thank you.
Yeah, so for today, they'd have to manually go to it. And they'd have to know the project exists and go to the project to interact with it. But what you're getting at is likely, this is again a hunch of mine, likely ChatGPT will adopt a feature called skills from Claude. So Claude is another model from Anthropic, similar to ChatGPT, just different color. That company, they've created a feature called a skill, which is basically what you're talking about, where it's kind of like a folder of prompts and code that the AI calls on in the right context. So if I'm just chatting with AI and whatever is happening, I'm like, hey, I want to do some RFI stuff. That triggers the AI. It's like, oh, RFI. I'm going to go over here and grab this. I'm going to pull into the conversation so it's in line with exactly what our standards are. But that's not in ChatGPT yet. That's only in Claude.
Okay.
So right now they would have to go to it manually.
Okay. 10-4. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. All right. I got another frustration is
Yeah.
humanity. It's going to boost us. We're going to be so much stronger with AI. But I know
Yeah.
I get your concern.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised. Like, so my niece and nephew, for instance, they use AI more frequently than most people. And that's actually another thing I found. Actually, OpenAI did research on different generations, seeing how each generation uses AI. And a lot of younger generations, they use it as kind of like a life OS, where they ask it insights and advice on all aspects of life, not just on work or whatever, but also health, psychology, relationships, all those things. And it's amazing. Like, I wish I had an all-seeing oracle when I was 16 to get some serious, probably good advice on what I should and shouldn't do, and like some of the stupid stuff that I did. Like, yeah, I envy my niece and nephew.
What I'd say to that, Megan, is, and I totally understand where you're coming from. I think part of the challenge is, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the transition from an oral to a written to an oral society again, just that thinking, is that this is ultimately, I think, going to change the way we think. That's what you've got to understand. Technology essentially changes the way we think, and it changes us as human beings. However, what we bring to AI, which AI doesn't necessarily specialize in yet, is that creativity and problem solving. And so the balance that you have to strike is using AI as a tool while maintaining what makes you unique as a human being. So think of all the experience that you have building projects, Megan, that the AI really doesn't know or needs help in order to access. That experience, that creativity, combined with the processing power of AI, combining those two things together, I think, is really where the magic happens. But you can't park your brain when you're using this stuff. You can't just delegate completely your creativity and your problem solving. You have to learn how to use the models in alignment with your creativity and your problem solving.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what's the sci-fi novel of something like the Galaxy one? The answer is 42.
Oh yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Right. So
You're
like
such a dork, Dylan. Come on, nobody knows that book.
I know, 100%. So the premise of it, right, is the question is harder than the answer. So when it comes to using AI, you have to be able to ask really high quality questions to get high quality responses.
Yes.
So if I give ChatGPT to somebody that knows nothing about construction and I say, go work on that construction project, they don't even know where to start. They don't even know what terms are, like me, I don't know what's going on. But if you give it to somebody that knows construction and AI, it's like, they have superpowers because they know what to ask, how to direct them, all those things. So it really just comes down to both your knowledge and the topic and the right questions to ask.
Yep. Okay. So we have a few minutes left here. Let me give you some homework. And this is preparing us for the second session. Number one, I added the bullet in here. Create an AI wish list and start experimenting with it. You'll get the slides as well. So we'll make sure you get the slides, the recording, the edited version and everything, just so you guys know. I see someone taking photographs at the screen. I got you, man. Whenever people start taking photographs of my PowerPoint, I'm like, dude, I'll send you the slides. It's all good. And then write 2 prompts and improve them with the prompt improver. That's one thing I would encourage you to do, particularly between now and the Q&A session. I think if you're going to get the most out of this, you want to commit some time between now and the Q&A session playing with the model, and then come into that Q&A session with some questions. Come with your frustrations, come with your wins, come with your losses, because that's where you're going to really be able to maximize your ROI. And then the last one is identify 1 or 2 repeatable tasks that you want to partially or completely automate in preparation for session 2. And you're already beginning to do this with the projects, but we're going to get into more detail on practical uses of projects, comparing that with custom GPTs. And the whole goal is to make sure that the timeline from prompt initiation to actually using something efficiently, we want to compress that as much as possible. And using the projects and the custom GPTs can help us to do that. All right. So here's my email, eric@constructiongenius.com. Any questions that you have between now and the Q&A session, of course, you can send them to me, and I'll make sure that Dylan gets his eyes on them as well, and we'll make sure that we get back to you within 24 hours. If you want to hold the questions for the Q&A, you can do that as well. My commitment to you is to get the summary and the edited transcript, et cetera, out to you by the end of the week. And so let me just, as we have 5 minutes here, any final questions or feedback before we sign off on the first session? No, we're good?
No.
Okay, give me a thumbs up if you found this time valuable. Was it helpful? Yep, thumbs up. Okay, beautiful, excellent, wonderful. Well, we appreciate it. Listen, you guys are doing a great job, by the way, so far. Let me just encourage you to stay locked in, though, right? because we're doing this over 4 sessions. I know work is busy, life is busy. I know your emails and texts have been blowing up in the last 2 hours. Thank you for your attention. Let's stay locked in, because again, that's how you're going to get the most out of it. Okay.